To stay in business, private broadcasters in Canada still must make a profit.
Don Willcox is program manager of CKCO in Kitchener, a position he's held since March of 1975. After graduating from Ryerson Polytechnical Institute, Don worked in radio in Huntsville and in Kitchener, progressing through news and promotions at CKCO-TV.
2 years ago, the Global Television Network was launched into what has to be considered the most competitive television market in North America.
Wayne Currie is the Global Television Network's creative director, with the responsibility for commercial production and promotion. Success in advertising for over 12 years in Western Canada and later in Toronto brought Wayne to Global 6 months prior to its launch date.
Hello, I'm David Picoski. From the viewpoint of CKCO-TV and the Global Television Network, the subject, private broadcasting in Canada. To better understand private television broadcasting in Canada as it exists today, let's take a brief look at its development.
Private television broadcasting in Canada has its roots in public broadcasting. It all began in 1919 with station XWA, an experimental station in Montreal. Today, XWA is CFCF. Broadcasting in the modern sense began in the early 20s. XWA was rapidly answered by numerous commercial stations, the first being licensed in 1922. They were owned and operated by large corporations, newspapers, radio manufacturers, radio clubs, and universities. The CNR played a most important role in the formation and development of Canadian broadcasting. Well before it owned any stations, it created a network for receiving stations in parlor cars by means of receivers. By the year 1932, this system involved some 20 stations. In 1929, the Royal Commissioned Arid Report on Broadcasting recommended the formation of a Broadcasting Commission. On May 26, 1932, the Canadian Radio Broadcasting Commission was born. The CRBC was a forerunner of the CBC. Along with facilities established by the CNR, the two expanded to structure a Canadian network. In 1936, the government-owned CBC was created and acquired all CRBC's facilities. Although Canada's first television experiments were conducted in Montreal in 1930, it was not until 1952 that the CBC first began its television service to Toronto and Montreal. Television coverage nationwide and its radio programs are heard around the world. CBC Television produces a broad, varied schedule to fulfill the national interests of Canadians coast to coast in English and in French. While the English headquarters are in Toronto, the French are located in La Maison Radio Canada in Montreal, which is hailed as one of the most modern broadcasting facilities anywhere in the world. CBC does all this at a deficit. For the year 1975, this deficit was approximately $260,751,000. As gross as this figure seems, it divides down to an estimate of $12 per Canadian to support the CBC's operation. Alternatives to the CBC were a logical progression for the development of private broadcasting in Canada. The first private television station was Sudbury's CKSO in October of 1953. Since these stations were not government-owned, commercial profits were essential to their survival. The first private broadcasting network in Canada was inaugurated in the fall of 1961, with the effect of most stations either belonging to the CBC or the newly formed CTV. CKCO-TV in Kitchener began as a private station in the spring of 1954. It, like CKSO-TV in Sudbury, later associated with the CTV network. CKCO claims the largest coverage area of any privately owned North American station and is well recognized for its sizable financial profits. The largest independent television station is Hamilton CHCH. Since its conception on June 5, 1954, CHCH has continually attained both high ratings and commercial profits due to its location and philosophy for programming. Located in the center of southern Ontario's Golden Horseshoe, it is the richest Canadian television market and effectively reaches an audience of over 3.5 million people. A keystone in this station's success is their ability to secure world premieres for popular movies. Another major independent station has developed in Edmonton. CKCO-TV is a professionally equipped television facility just beginning to prove itself and enjoys an informal affiliation with CKCO-TV. CKCO-TV is now building an additional facility in Vancouver. French station CFTM, or Telemetropole, is the second largest independent station in Canada. CFTM not only serves Canada's largest metropolitan centre, Montreal, but is also a large production convenience, recently doubling its facilities. Although many television stations have their own production companies affiliated with them, the demand and market for commercials and programs allows for private independent production companies to thrive. Canada's newest private television network is Global, which began its operation on January 6, 1974. A series of 6 transmitters across southern Ontario and a potential market of 7 million Canadians from Windsor to Ottawa. They're awaiting the CRTC's approval for a 7th transmitter to be located near Maxville. Global's production center is located in Toronto. After 2 years, the infant network is just beginning to recover from initial financial difficulties. Provincial governments are embarking in television and/or radio networks within their boundaries. TV Ontario, formerly OECA, and Radio Quebec are 2 prime examples of an evident trend in serving the individual provinces in the similar manner that CBC serves Canada.
Where is private television broadcasting at and where is it going? With me, Wayne Currie and Don Willcox. Don, in a private organization, money is a priority. Are you giving your audience optimum quality for the revenue you receive?
I believe so. I think it's a situation, naturally, every private operation in Canada, whether it be a station or a network, must constantly be looking at operating budgets and sales revenue. And of course, the sales revenue must be greater than the expense ledger. If it isn't, you won't stay in business very long. So I think every private broadcaster in this country has a goal, and that is to provide the best programming to their audience, that the dollars that they have available will allow them to do so.
Do you produce local programming, and if so, what percentage to outside programming?
Yes, we're producing local programming. We're producing local programming for use on the CTV television network, and we're also producing local programs strictly for our own audience, our own coverage area. When you ask percentages, I think it's a situation where I'm not prepared to say what percentage we are producing, but we do produce a large part of our daily schedule from our studios.
And Wayne, what about the quality and revenue situation with Global?
Since it began, Global has been going through this kind of a crash course in survival. We launched in January 1974 with 25 new Canadian programs, about 6 American programs and 3 or 4 British programs, a ratio that's pretty unusual in this country as Canadian versus foreign, and in 2 months we were bankrupt. The problem we're facing is fulfilling our programming ambitions on an affordable basis. Right now, the major financial commitment we have is behind our news operation, and it has been widely acclaimed as a good news operation, certainly highly competitive. In the Toronto market particularly, our 6 o'clock news is now the #1 newscast, so that the expenditure behind that kind of programming is paying off. As to the broad spectrum of programming, we will do programs consistent with our ability to pay for them. As our revenue and resources increase, sure, we'll expand our horizons. We want to do better things, but for the first period of time anyway, we were handicapped just keeping our head above water.
Do you produce programs for use outside of your own network on a money basis?
No, at the present time, what we produce we use on our own air. We do have different producers work within the Global facility to produce programs to go elsewhere.